last status update, I refurbished and rehabilitated the front yard terrariums in this gin bottle terrarium, but did not seal them. That was in March, and in April I got around to sealing them. I added a little water to each terrarium to make up for the evaporation, and added some isopods to the gin bottle terrarium. The isopods lasted for several weeks after sealing, but after a couple of overcast days in a row, they all died. I think what happened is that the plants couldn't do enough photosynthesis in the overcast weather to generate the oxygen needed for the isopods to survive, but the fact that they've all burrowed underground suggests that maybe they dehydrated instead. Either way, the solution is probably just to use bigger terrariums with more air and water buffer and more places for them to shelter when it gets too hot or too dry. I'll probably try that when I refurbish this carboy terrarium, but that'll be later. In the front yard, I also removed Terrarium 201, which didn't survive. In fact, both of the terrariums left under the greenhouse tent did very badly. It seems that the greenhouse only made things hotter. In retrospect, I should have seen this coming, but in my defense, I figured that since the jars already experience a greenhouse effect, you couldn't get a double greenhouse effect, and the shade from the plastic covering would reduce the overall amount of heating. That doesn't seem to have been the case, however, so I have removed the remaining terrarium to join the other one behind this metal shade. A month later, in mid-May, those terrariums are still doing okay. The creeping fig plant has died off a lot, but there's still a few green leaves, primarily on the shaded side, so that seems to be protecting it enough so far. The native plant terrarium has only one of these tiny little plants. This is actually the second one of these to sprout in there. One of them already sprouted and died. It's not growing very quickly, but we'll keep an eye on it. These plants do seem well suited for these terrariums. They don't grow very large, and they tolerate high temperatures and wet or prolonged dry conditions outside of the terrariums, so I'm cautiously optimistic. I also cut down 2 trees in my backyard the week before last. Most of the backyard terrariums were located underneath these trees, and the shade from them is probably principally responsible for the greater success rate that I've seen with these terrariums as compared with, for instance, the front yard ones. It's been mostly overcast since then, so the terrariums seem to be doing all right for now, at least, the ones that survived the winter storm. But they might have more trouble as the summer goes on. So we shall have to wait and see for that.